what's next, Gary? How do we design a program, right? So we're going for you. What's your ideal week? You go, okay, I have my goals. Someone has come to you. They give you their goals exactly like you said. They're like, I want to get better at jiu-jitsu. That's my main goal. I have a strength surplus, but I want to at least maintain that. We'll call it gaintain. Anyone who says main gain, they're gone. Get out, leave.
Shocking.
Gaintain. Anyway, you want to at least gaintain, right? So how do you set up your training program, right? And you also want to build a bit more anaerobic conditioning potentially, because you say there's a little bit of a deficit there. You could definitely be better at it. Like we could all be always.
Yeah.
There's always more to have. But how are you designing your program, and what's the ideal week for you, right? So obviously you said whatever 4 to 6 jiu-jitsu sessions. Again, obviously you have a busy schedule.
Yeah. Let's just say 4.
Yeah, we'll just say a baseline of 4 with a happy 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's say around 4 sessions of jiu-jitsu per week. I think for me, if I can get 3 decent quality strength sessions, like I'm delighted. I think that's a really solid week for me. And the way I like to kind of set up my training, and I've probably deviated back towards this. I was doing a lot of to be honest, probably mainly full body sessions for a while. But I shifted back towards more of kind of a push-pull legs approach. So like basically just, chest, shoulders, triceps one day, then got your back work, biceps, maybe some posterior shoulder work, and then legs on the 3rd day. I find that to be the best approach for me personally, because it means I can just go in, focus on those sessions, get all that volume done to a high quality, and not worry about it then if I miss a full body session. Because that's what was happening, is that I do a full body session and then maybe I would have a jiu-jitsu session the next day, and those 2 kind of doses of whole body fatigue would basically compound each other. And then the next training day I was supposed to go in and lift weights again, and then I'd be thinking, I'm still not recovered from my squats, I don't know if I can deadlift, and so on. Whereas for me, with the push-pull legs approach, if I do my chest, my shoulders, my triceps on a Monday, and I do jiu-jitsu as well, yeah, my chest, shoulders, and triceps might be super fatigued still on Tuesday or Wednesday, but I can go in and I can do pull work fine. I can do my pull downs, I can do my rows, and it's no issue, or I can do my leg work and it's no issue. So that's probably something I've changed my mind on recently. I did think that full body approaches were a bit better, and they are for many people. But for me, I found that
they would work. Say, for example, if you had your week was Monday was a training day, Wednesday was a training day, Friday was a training day. You only did jiu-jitsu 3 times per week. You did resistance training on those same days, and you basically destroy your whole body on each of those days. But then you have 4 days of recovery. It can work quite well then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is important to understand, because when we always talk about training, we always talk about the training side of things. We rarely talk about the recovery side of things, which is probably more important.
Yeah, like for me, my schedule is just super messy, very unpredictable. And there's often things that come up in the days that I have more time. Like, for example, I'm in London this weekend, I'm going to Tenerife in a few weeks, then it's going to be Christmas. There's just a lot of things that kind of end up taking my weekends or my free days.
Yeah, like especially because you're doing medicine, you have a business to run. Like obviously, like I do a lot of the day-to-day stuff, but there's still stuff that I'm like, Gary, you need to do this today. You need to get in contact with this person today, or you need to do whatever it is today. Or we'll have, like, as we always do, have lots of projects going on in the background, and I'll be like, Gary, this needs to be completed this week or next week. So you would have had like, I have a training session planned here, that gets interrupted. Or in college or whatever, you might be like, oh no, actually they just decided to spring a test on us next week, or I have to stay later in this whatever, or there's an assignment due that I didn't get done on time, or whatever, something pops up.
Yeah, and I mean, like between Friday and Monday, like that's probably when I have the most time to train. But I also end up doing a lot more triage work, especially my coaching work. Like I do a lot of that between Friday and Monday. So as a result, like if I'm behind on that, I just have to prioritize that over my training. So as a result, the push-pull legs approach has been working quite well for me recently. And you might say, oh, but isn't a higher frequency approach potentially more optimal? And like, yes, potentially more optimal, but this isn't about optimal necessarily. It's about practical, because there's no point setting up the perfect 3-day full body program with higher frequencies if you end up missing sessions because of subsequent fatigue or recovery deficits. So for me, push-pull legs approach, somewhere between 8 to 12 sets per muscle group per week, which again is on that lower end of the volume recommendations we typically provide. But remember, it's not necessarily my priority to push those things to the max. I think that's a really important point to impress upon, because what people always think when we say, oh, you know, you want to be doing 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week, maybe 15 to 25 if you're really putting an emphasis on a particular muscle group. People hear that and they hear 20 to 25. They don't hear the bottom end of the range.
And they also hear 20 to 25 for all muscle
groups. Yes. And the reality is that, especially if you're doing another sport, like aiming for the bottom end of the range, at least on most muscle groups, is probably wise. And the way that I would approach it then, if I was trying to maybe, let's say I was really focusing on my chest, is I might push the remainder of the muscle groups down to that 8 to 12 range. And then I might do 15 sets per week for chest, something like that. So that works really well for me, given the limitations. And then from the cardio side of things, like jiu-jitsu obviously takes care of a lot of your cardio gains, which is fantastic. And I'm kind of deliberate enough with that too, where, for example, if we go to a standard jiu-jitsu class, what typically happens is you do all your drilling and then
you do a warm-up.
Yes.
The heart rate going.
Blue belt, bro. Well, no, to be fair, you need your purple belt first to skip warm-ups. But basically you do your warm-ups, then you'll do some drilling, then maybe some specific sparring, and then kind of open sparring, something like that. So the thing is, with the standard class, sparring is a little bit especially if you're in an advanced class with the color belts, it's a bit harder to take it easy. You know, you can try and take it easy, but if you're getting smashed, you just have to, you know, work hard, and especially
frustrate them.
Yeah.
Come on, tappable.
Yeah, easier said than done with the black belts. But if you're with someone that's at your level, that you've maybe a bit of a rivalry with, or they're like your gauge of where you're at, you want to have a good role and you want to go hard. So they end up being very anaerobic, I guess. They're still heavily aerobic, but you're digging into more of those anaerobic components, and you're going to be more fatigued after those classes, especially if you're doing like 2-hour classes. So what I like to do then at the open mat sessions is I'll treat those as almost like my aerobic workouts. So I will, you know, say before a roll, okay, I'm focusing on this. I'll take my first few nice and light, and maybe 1 or 2 hard rolls. But in general, I'm trying to pace myself. I'm trying to keep the heart rate down a bit, and I'm trying to focus on finding that balance between using my fitness and actually being able to preserve my skill, because that's effectively the purpose of those sessions. It's not necessarily hard sparring. So that's my kind of approach at the moment. And then I'll supplement that with some additional aerobic work, somewhere between maybe 1 to 2 hours per week, ideally. But if I get an hour, I'm doing pretty well, you know. So that might be something like either steady state on the bike or another piece of cardio equipment, maybe going for a run, or I'll often, you know, go for a long walk or a hike with my girlfriend, where my heart rate might be between 120 to 150, maybe, if we're going hiking. So that again would contribute to my overall aerobic load. If I had more time, and especially during the summer and stuff, and when I have time off, I would do more of that. But for now, it's just not practical. So that's kind of what I try to prioritize. Now, the anaerobic side of things, which absolutely improves your aerobic fitness too, I really like just hard, short intervals. So typically something between 20 and 40 seconds in duration, sometimes a little bit longer. I'll do those on the assault bike, or if I'm in a gym that has other pieces of equipment, I might do the rower, the ski erg, the bike erg, things like that. I'll very rarely do things like running sprints, because they just take so much out of you. If you're just trying to focus on anaerobic fitness rather than like actual running performance or field sports performance, you're just leaving yourself, at least for me, in a position where you're getting loads of extra hamstring and adductor soreness that's just unnecessary, really, for the benefits.
And also, like, if you're doing jiu-jitsu, like someone heel hooks you or something, and then your ankle's a bit at you, like you can't really sprint with that, whereas you can go on the fucking bike.
Yeah. You know? And that's the beautiful thing about things like the assault bike, is that they're primarily concentric. So you're never taking like the landing, force absorption, eccentric loading that you're taking when you're doing running. And that's why, although an assault bike or an echo bike session might leave you feeling like absolute death, generally you actually wake up the next morning and you're like, oh, I actually have no muscle soreness.
Yeah, or even later
What's
that
up
day,
with
you
that?
kind of feel like I actually feel better. Whereas you go for a sprint and you're like, I still feel fatigued after that.
And to be fair, like early on, that mightn't be the case, because there definitely is muscle damage that comes from concentric activity, and especially very metabolically demanding activity. When you're accumulating a lot of metabolites from that really fast energy substrate conversions and stuff, that does affect your muscle tissue, and it can lead to muscle soreness and muscle damage, but it's far less pronounced than eccentric activities like lifting or sprinting, etc. So that works really well for me, and I definitely get a lot of benefit from that. And I think if I can get 2 of those sessions done per week on top of everything else, fantastic. During the summer, I was doing probably up to 4 sessions of that per week, but it's very rough in terms of kind of systemic fatigue that you tend to develop. So if I did that, a really hard interval session like that in the morning, like my head is a bit fried, to be honest, for the next few hours. So that's not ideal if I'm going into the hospital, or I have to study, or I have triage work to prioritize, like in a deep work phase for 2 hours or something. So for me, if I get 2 interval sessions, I get an extra hour of steady state aerobic work on top of my jiu-jitsu. Then I got my 3 strength sessions. Like, I'm delighted if I get all that done.
So talk us through the week. Go like Monday to Sunday. How does that look?
Okay, so Monday, ideal
week.
Yeah, ideal week. Okay, so Monday I'll typically do a no-gi jiu-jitsu session. So that's
morning or the evening?
Evening. So that's a fixed session. Then I've got Tuesday, I've got gi jiu-jitsu evening. Wednesday, open mat. Thursday, gi jiu-jitsu. Friday, open mat again. Sometimes I'll go Saturday, but generally I'm picking 4 of those days. So a great week for me would be lifting on Monday morning, jiu-jitsu on Monday evening. Typically not Tuesday morning, because if I train in like Monday evening and I've done the morning before as well, I'll try to prioritize my sleep then to recover on the Tuesday, go back in for jiu-jitsu on Tuesday evening. Then Wednesday, let's say Wednesday morning, I lift and I'll do one of those interval sessions. And then Wednesday evening, I'll do my open mat. That finishes a bit early, which is nice because open mat's only on until about 6 o'clock. So I can prioritize work then on Wednesday evenings. Then Thursday, we're, sleeping in again. Not necessarily sleeping in, but not
till 5.
Till 5, obviously. But I won't generally train on a Thursday morning. Then I'll train Thursday evening again. And then maybe I'll lift Friday morning and do my, actually, I don't really lift on a Friday morning. I'll do the open mat on Friday evening. And then Saturday is when I'll get in my last strength session, typically some cardio.
And maybe a hike or something.
Yeah, maybe a hike or something. Sunday as well, I'll do some cardio as well. So yeah, it's typically Saturday and Sunday I'll like catch up on my cardio that I haven't done, because sometimes I end up caught for time and I don't have time for intervals or whatever. But yeah, I guess that's kind of the ideal week.